Hello and welcome everyone. My name is Shazia and we are here learning and listening to various stories. As every story is different and so is every perspective. This is Humans of Pharma platform by Pharma State Academy, which is focusing on different pharma stories based on any pharma career, one's pharma journey, current affairs, and the book discussion. We are here for the third career series episode, and in this particular episode today, we will get insights on empowering pharma branding with creative thinking and digital skills. Speaking of empowering pharma branding, I would like to introduce the special guest we have in the spotlight today, Ms. Deepa Bala. She is someone who has dedicated her life to the world of pharma branding, a creative thinking coach on a mission to help pharma brand custodians excel in creative thinking and digital skills. Ma'am has an incredible story that had begun with a dream of becoming a doctor. That was lost by a mere mark, but yes, as fate would have it, this setback led her to discover her true passion in advertising, where ideas rushed in like a flood. Deepawala ma'am has spent over 20 years living and breathing every brand in the healthcare industry. Her journey has been filled with trials, concepts, and countless memories, both good and bad. As a brand custodian herself, she understands the emotional connection we all have with the brands and the decisions that drive them. She has started her own venture, Petrikor, and now creative coach at 𝐏𝐡𝐚𝐭 to help healthcare legends and brands trail and leave behind milestones and memories for future generations. She believes that every brand is a cherished archive, and it's incredible how they all intersect in healthcare industry. So welcoming Ms. Deepa Bala. Thank you, ma'am, for your presence.
Thanks a lot, Shazia. Oh, the resume sounds so good. I never knew it could sound so good. And thanks a lot.
Okay, let's get this conversation started. Okay. How are you, Deepa, ma'am? How is the day treating you?
Okay, so yes, it has been a very good journey. It has been a very interesting and engaging and a learning journey for these last 15 to 20 years. So I have enjoyed the complete process, and I felt that now it's time to give back to the industry. So here I am.
Okay, here we are with the first question. Why do you think there is a need to inspire and motivate pharma brand management to unleash their creative potential?
Okay, basically creativity or creative thinking. Now, this is more about problem solving. It is not just about making a visual aid or just about making some print collaterals. It goes into much more depth than those, So if you have basically creative thinking is about, it works across the borders. It is the core to any brand building. So for example, say you have a business issue you need for researching, and you need molecular ideas, you need a brand idea, you need a marketing strategy, you need a brand strategy, or you even need a sales strategy, or even a finance strategy. All these boil down to identifying the problem, and once you solve the problems, then you get your solutions. So how do you identify the problem, or what type of questions you ask, or what type of ideas you generate? These will form the base of your further growth. And that's where creative thinking or problem solving comes into picture. So this has been doing very well. For example, now, if you ask me, why do you want to inspire? Well, let's take it in two perspectives. Okay, we have the pharma perspective and we will have the agency perspective. Now, in pharma perspective, earlier the module was more into branding. Okay, each one definitely was more focused on building brands. Therefore, you had extremely maybe good molecules or brands like, say, Augmentin and 𝐂𝐤𝐴𝐷, which even today the chemist remembers. So what happened is, now over the period, branding overall in the industry has, taken a toll. And further in pharma industry, there's been a change in the model at the corporate level. So you have had earlier at the corporate level, the CEOs were more of branding and marketing driven. And now you have most of the CFOs who are more financially driven. So now, because they're more financially driven, creativity is now forced to be tangible. Okay? So you can't have concepts across with a budget on a concept. So it's an idea generation process and it takes its own time. So the moment there's been a change, which will definitely going to affect the agency, So there is, even their modules are changing parallelly. So they are also struggling with budgets and deadlines and so on. Now coming again to pharma, say one patent, say example, 𝐂𝐤𝐴𝐡𝐚𝐵. 𝐂𝐤𝐴𝐡𝐚𝐵 is off patent. It is going to flood the market with about 200 brands or so. Now, getting 200 ideas from the healthcare agencies for 𝐂𝐤𝐴𝐡𝐚 is going to be a big challenge. And third is digital. Now, pharma is going to burst at its seams with digital growth. And that's not easy. Digital growth means you need a lot of content, be it website, be it blogs, be it Facebook posts, even if it's an email, everything will need a Facebook ad. It requires a hell lot of thinking. So, and parallelly, if you see in the agency industry, the creative thinkers, there is going to be a dearth of creative thinkers that side, it is shrinking. So for example, if I'm saying, according to Google, there are say 60,000 generic brands, okay? Pharma generic brands are approximately 60,000. Now, of 60,000, say only 20,000 want to promote their brand. The rest of them are not interested in promoting, as in branding wise, right? So even if 20,000 want to promote their brand, if you check out on the healthcare agency side, we are short of people, as in we may not have more than 300 or 500 medical writers. And if you're talking about creative thinkers or hardcore copywriters who have a domain expertise in science, it goes even further low, So there is, and also if you notice, from last 2010 onwards, even advertising mainline is suffering from a dearth of people, because most of the children are now going abroad. There is a total brain drain. Half of them want to stay in London, US, Canada, Australia, wherever. So this on the whole is going to cause a major dearth in the copywriters in the industry. So that's where I felt pharma already has a domain expertise. The already strength is domain expertise. So if you just add creative thinking skills to it, and creative thinking skills is not has much of a criteria or requirement. It just requires a brain, okay? It's about generating ideas. So if we have creative thinking plus domain expertise, we will be able to raise the bar of creativity parallelly, It will be a very good process. You will have more ideas, more problem-solving options, and therefore more creativity. So that is where I felt it is very important for to start off on creative thinking as early as possible.
Really. And like you said, why do you feel there is a dearth of creative thinkers? Is there any other reason for that? Like you have already said one, but yeah, is there any other reason?
Okay. Now I will tell you a simple story, a simple anecdote which happened with me. Somewhere about 3 years back, I was very excited because I wanted to do this digital marketing course and stuff. So I enrolled myself for digital marketing and it started the course. And the first question the coach asked is, how old is your mobile? And there were quite a few students who were quite young. So some of them had an iPhone and, so most of them had like 6 months, 1 year, 2 years. The maximum cutoff rate was 2 years. And there are about 4 or 5 of my age and my batch. So you know how it is. So I was quite proud of myself. I had my mobile for 4 years. So I was like, okay, I had it for 4 years. So he just looked at me and scoffed, and he said, ma'am, you're a digital dinosaur. And I was shocked because I thought I'd done a good deed by keeping my mobile for 4 years, But it also, parallelly, if you check out, he said, you are a digital dinosaur, and I didn't understand. But my mobile used to constantly give me this message, this bank app cannot come, it is outdated, this cannot come, it is outdated. So I went to the HTC center and I asked him, do something about this. So HTC center says, madam, ye outdate ho gaya tumhara OS. Kuch naya leke aao. And he just threw it back at me. And that's when I realized, that our brain is parallel to that OS. And we don't update it regularly. We may update our phones every year, but our brain is never updated. And that is what has happened in the industry. We have a lot of workshops for brand strategy, brand management, brand consultant, even brand positioning. But somewhere creative thinking has taken a backseat. There have been workshops, but very far and few. It has not been a concentrated effort to build creative thinking as a base. And especially if you see the pharma or the healthcare industry, the jobs are so much that the agency is highly stressed and choked, because the amount of jobs that come in are so high. So what happens in creative thinking is ultimately you need to have a lot of experiences. Means it's all about the more experience you have, the more ideas you can connect to, So it's all about so if I'm going to a museum one day, or if I see a movie one day, or if I'm seeing a masjid one day, or if I see a temple one day, each place I see, or an exhibition, or even if I'm going to an NGO, the more exposure you have, then the more ideas you get. Or even if you read a book, even if you sit alone and read a book, but even that much time is not available anymore to these healthcare guys, I doubt anyone has even seen the sun for last 1 year. They all work from morning, or even say 11 to 11, parallelly they're working in the AC atmosphere. Half of them have not seen the sun, and they have not been able to do something. And even if you get those 5 days holiday, you have to manage your basic personal work, So this sort of learning is missing. This sort of experience is missing. So what happens is, there is this fractal model. According to the fractal model, input and process will give you the output. So if your input is not there, if your input is less, your output is going to be less, right? So what is going to happen in the whole process is, the entire structure is very stressed out. So there's going to be just regurgitation of ideas. For new ideas, you need that space, you need that experience. And that is possible when pharma upgrades itself a bit, So yahan thoda load kam hoga. So together you can raise the bar of creativity, So that's where I feel that, look, we could make a lot of difference.
So here, it's a little different question, but yes, how your background validates your current purpose?
Okay, to give you just a background, I have done my pharmacy, and I was working in Cadilla for some time, long back, and then I moved to Soham, which was a client servicing. I started off in the client servicing initially, and then I moved on to the creative side. So I have been in the advertising agency for about now 15 years. Between Sorrento and McCann Health, I have served about 15 years. And it has been a wonderful journey, because I must have done some about 100 odd brands, and we must have done some 1,000 odd ideas and 2,000 collaterals and stuff. It has been a very good journey, a lot of learning, good fun. And also, when I started my Petrikor as my agency, the learnings have been just doubled. And we have been very fortunate, because Petrikor is the only agency which has, had the privilege to do the complete train, conceptualizing and digitalizing the first metro which ran from Andheri to Ghatkopar. So this is definitely thanks to Genbert Pharmaceuticals, thanks to Mr. Ashish Butta, who believed in us and gave us the, entire job to do it, and I think we really had good fun doing it. So I have been in this industry, and throughout in this industry, the learnings which I have gathered, or which even some of my colleagues in the same field have gathered, I have realized that this has happened more and more through trial and experiment and trial and error. There has not been a structured course which says, okay, you can do 1, 2, 3 things. So now what happened is, thanks to COVID, I was just thinking, karu kya? Then I realized, why don't I do this? Why don't I give back to the industry a little more formatted version so that the next batch finds it easy. They don't have to spend 10 years in the grind. At least 3 saal aage, it will work, So yeah, so I did a lot of reading and searching because creative thinking and these things are more skewed towards mainline or main OTC. So most of the examples are a Nike or a Coca-Cola, So working towards pharma brands was quite a challenge. So that's where I felt that, look, because I have the background, I can give it back to the industry.
I've done many calculations over here, actually. So going ahead, Deepa ma'am, how important is it for pharma professional to develop their digital skills, and what are some effective ways to stay up to date with the latest trends and technologies?
So digital skills can be divided into 2 parts. Okay. Now, one is understanding how the entire thing works. So, for example, maybe you understand what is SEO, what is SEM, what is Google Analytics, what is email marketing. You understand how the whole thing works. It's very important, how the whole thing works, because so that it works, you can integrate into the system, right? The second part of digital content is digital content. Now, digital content, I feel, is where the pharma can bring a lot of difference, because that is where the domain expertise matters. Okay. So otherwise, there won't be a differential. If you're going to give, for example, if you have a simple example, say we have an SEO and you ask a techie guy to write about, a techie guy may write simply as breast cancer. Okay. But if you have a pharma guy who's got a brand expertise, he will maybe put it into a more scientific term, a more long-tailed keyword, something like maybe a human epidermal growth factor, HER2 or something else. So that is more important from the medical point of view. So that can bring a lot of difference as far as pharma is concerned. They can be strong in digital content if they, upskill or upgrade themselves, because that sort of expertise, I don't think anybody else in the sector can bring to it. A techie guy can do the back end, and if you get an outside content writer, they may not be able to add that nuances which you need with domain expertise. So that is where I felt that digital skills are very important. But we must also remember that the hardware part of it is a little difficult to understand. As in, you do your hardware today, you learn everything, and by the next week, the entire thing is changed. It changes so fast. So you can just keeping updated is not easy, because if you open YouTube, you'll just be hit with 1,000 things. You'll have a Neil Patel talking on SEO, and you'll have somebody else talking on SEM, and somebody else talking on LinkedIn, YouTube, Instagram. Everything hits you. And the more you learn, the less you know. You just feel like, yeah, I didn't know this, I didn't know that, it just keeps going down and down. So technology-wise, I think you can take in much. You can learn the digital skills. There are digital courses which give you the base as to how to go about it. And of course, you must update yourself daily if possible. Spend an hour learning every day, because otherwise you definitely get lost. The speed is so fast, and especially if you are in that scenario, you also need to know the jargons, and you need to know, you need to know what's new, because the issue with digital is, especially for pharma, a lot of law comes into it, so we have to know whether I can put this word is right or not. I cannot put a free, I cannot put, there are some, you may have a spam issue, or you may have a medical or a FDA issues if you have all these names and terms. So you have to be very careful. So therefore, if a pharma is doing digital, they have to keep the medical laws and also in the picture. So there's a lot more learning they need to do than an influencer who can just get away with anything. If you're writing in the mainstream, it doesn't make so much of a difference. But yeah, like you had that Kardashian getting jacked for a Facebook ad or something, right? So if Kim Kardashian got jacked, so you have to be careful what you say, very careful. So that's where I think digital strategies do make a lot of difference. In future, it's going to be the growth driver. As far as I mentioned, Gerd Leonard, he's one of the top 10 futurists. So he has mentioned that creativity and digital are going to be the economic drivers of the future.
Here we are with a wonderful set of advisors. Thank you so much. And as we are in the digital era, we need to understand and upskill ourselves with digital skills. Rightly said, ma'am. Here. Going ahead, what are some of the most effective strategies to build a strong personal brand and establish themselves as thought leaders in the industry?
Well, actually, I may not be the right person to tell you about the personal branding, but still, it's a good way to start early. Okay, so what happens in personal brand is, it just builds in more. It's more of a perception that somebody else has about you. So you never know what is happening. For example, I'll just give you a small example. Like I started my own advertising agency, Petrikor. And so because it was small, we were just 3 of us. So I used to do the client servicing and I used to come back and do my creatives also, strategy creatives. So what happened is, suppose I go for a client servicing meet and I take the brief and I come back, then I switch off my mobile. Okay, because I need that sort of time for strategy and creativity. But if you ask in the industry, okay, how's Deepa? You will get the feedback that, creative hai, lekin phone nahi uthati. So that is a perception which has stuck to me. So personal branding is it's like walking the tightrope, You have to be very careful of what you're doing because you never know what people are perceiving in the long run, So every action of yours or every non-action of yours matters a lot, The only advantage is when you start early, you have, especially now, you have a very good footing to start on, You can develop as to your learning abilities, you can develop your communication and skills, you can develop on a complete holistic way, And especially now with digital coming in, I think it's a real boon for personal branding. So as early as maybe when they step out from college or even in college, they have the option of starting their own website. They can do their own website. It's a practice. See, because if you're learning digital skills, you just put it down here. So you start your website and you start your blog, you experiment with Facebook community, or even if it's, suppose your brand is something as simple as say an anemia, but you still, maybe you check out on, maybe you make a Facebook group on iron or anemia or something and build it. When you build it over the period, you start getting ideas, you get questions, you get more insights for building your own brand. And of course, it may work, it may not work, that is secondary, but personal branding off field also they can do. Based on the brand, they could work on some with NGO and understand better, how is anemia connected. Maybe they could work with 2 or 3 colleges, girls' colleges. So you find out how you can build your brand, and in the process, you learn a lot, So that's where personal branding stands, and it is very important in the whole process. So ultimately in personal branding, what are we doing? We are just building connects and network and community, because ultimately it's the community which matters. So when you start fast, then you build followers, you build community, you become an influencer, So that's how personal branding works.
Okay, Deepa ma'am. As a creative thinking coach, what inspired you to start a creative business outcome, and how do you help individuals and organizations unlock their creative potential?
Yeah, like as I mentioned this earlier a bit, Shazia, as I mentioned that I realized that there could be, a dearth in creative copywriting, and I also felt that the pharma company could, equip themselves with creative thinking. Now, people may get a little worried saying, "Arey, what is creative thinking now? One more job, But creative thinking is, there are two things. One is creative thinking and one is creative doing. Okay. Now, creative thinking is more about thinking, problem solving, generating ideas. And creative doing is more of a long-term practice, like copywriting and, really hardcore writing. So I don't expect most pharma companies to jump into copywriting tomorrow's subah nikal ke line likh. Okay, but that also is nowadays possible with ChatGPT. Anything is possible. So, but the fact is, if they start thinking more for their brands, working more for their thing, it will help them in the long run, because once you have a lot of, see, the thing is, we don't know, we are in silos, we operate, and then suddenly we have this AI hovering around our jobs and you never know where we are losing. So ultimately, it's going to be more on the non-cognitive skills which will help you out, So that is why I felt that let me start this creative business outcome, which will help them both, at least what I can help them through creative thinking and digital help, whatever I can afford, or I can give it across, share my learnings, share my experience. It would be a wonderful journey.
And it's high time you all unlock your creative side. Finally, the last question. What do you see as a future of pharmaceutical industry, and what advice would you give to freshers who are looking to stay ahead of the curve and succeed in this rapidly changing landscape?
So the thing is, now when you have an MBA kid coming out, okay, or even say pharma brand managers, the younger ones, executives, now they all are standing on the same platform. Okay, they all have a pharma degree, they all have an MBA degree, they all are marketingly equipped, they're all good in sales, they're all good in strategy, and in the meanwhile, they must have also picked up some digital certificates across. So the entire thing, they're all good at. So how do they differentiate themselves? So just like their brand needs a USP or a positioning or a differentiation, somewhere along the line, they need to differentiate themselves. It could be anything. I mean, I'm not saying go differentiate yourself with creative thinking, okay? But creative thinking is one platform where they can differentiate themselves. So tomorrow, if marketing is wanting to have a new innovation, they could give some ideas. Okay. Or maybe if you want to have a brand name, or if you want to have a brand strategy. So it's all about sharing more ideas and more possibilities, right? So each one could bring into the table their own differentiation, but creative thinking is something coming from the brain. So definitely it will give you a upper hand if you manage to, flex that muscle. So that's where I felt that is one USP or one way of differentiation that can help them. I also feel that maybe the companies and maybe the agencies, like how you have the happy hour to encourage drinking, we must have a learning hour. There must be a learning hour in companies or even in agencies. So even in that half an hour, what you pick up definitely stays with you, even if it's a light, a light activity or whatever it could. And I also believe that creative thinking is not a just-in-case option, It has reached a just-in-time scenario. It's not that jab bhi aayega dekha jayega. It is not like that. Because you need to hone and learn the skill. It will take you some time because the brain is not used to it, So the brain needs to be having some new developments. And so the brain is going to resist. It will take time to build. So the quicker you jump in, the better it is. The faster you learn. So that's what I feel. And because it's a very competitive area, they're stepping into a very competitive zone. And it's not only competitive, it is also quite going to be confusing. You don't know, every day something is hitting you from somewhere. There are so many new developments. There are so many things to keep up with. And it's not that they're just learning developments. Parallelly, they also have a lot of brand collaterals and brand parallels and brand strategy. So it's not easy for them. It's going to be a tough time. But if you keep the learning for a year, means if you're a lifelong learner, it would definitely keep them in good stead.
Simple and wonderfully put.
We all love in-clinic activities before we leave the doctor's clinic. So similarly, I have a activity for you all. So here we go. Dear friends, whether it is business, whether it is research, whether it is finance, sales, marketing, strategy, all of these you need to identify the problem, right? And you need to define the problem. But in the whole process, if you remove this base, this entire base, the whole thing will then topple, right? And that base is nothing but creativity. Base to everything, to your growth, to your brand's growth, and to your business growth. Thank you.
I know I have asked a lot of questions here, and I wanted to thank you for your presence.
Definitely like to take this opportunity to thank Shazia, thank you, and also thank Pharma State Academy for giving me this wonderful opportunity to share my thoughts and experience. Thanks a lot. All the best.
And everyone who is watching, I hope you enjoy this episode. Reach out if you have any suggestion for future episodes by connecting with us on LinkedIn and other social media channels at Humans of Pharma, or by email us at humansoffpharma@pharmastate.com. Bye and thank you. Thank you so much, Deepa.